Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are going to discuss Tesla Autopilot, and we want to discuss what is Tesla Autopilot, how is it different from full self-driving or FSD, and how do you activate Autopilot, how do you use it, and how does it work on European roads. Tesla Autopilot is included on every Tesla. Since 2019 there is no additional cost of Tesla Autopilot. It is included on every vehicle. So, what is Tesla Autopilot? Well, it's Autosteer and traffic-aware cruise control combined. And traffic-aware cruise control means that you have adaptive cruise control with the ability to move slowly in traffic and stop and go in traffic, which many cars have, of course. And Autosteer is the ability for lane holding, but Tesla does even more to the lane holding bit, which I will show you later in this video. So, stay tuned for that. And it's important to preface that this is not FSD or fully self-driving. This is a completely different product from Tesla, which doesn't even work in Europe yet. And the same with enhanced autopilot. It's just autopilot with some additional features. I won't be discussing FSD or enhanced autopilot today. We'll focus on normal included free autopilot, and we will see how it does. Okay. So let's test Autopilot. So you can see this road, there are no markings at all. And I wouldn't activate Autosteer here. Of course I can use adaptive cruise control, which is one pull down on the handle and one up to disable. That's just the adaptive cruise control, or traffic aware cruise control that Tesla calls it. But I wouldn't use Autosteer here because the lane markings are not good enough. So when we come over here, you'll see the lane markings are better, but there is still no center marking. But Autosteer will still work. So if we move into the 50 zone here and I pull down twice to activate Autosteer, you can see that the car will hold the correct position. It will not try to move over to the other side. And even here, you can see there are bus markings. It doesn't react to that. It will still work and it will still steer fine. You can see that I'm holding the wheel, of course, like you should with this system. It's not hands-free yet, and I doubt it will ever be on roads like this. But it'll work on roads that doesn't have a center line, which is very nice and unique to the Tesla system. Not many other systems does this. I'll disable the Autosteer when I come to an intersection. Here you can see there is a nice center line, but there is no line on the outside. Here it will work perfectly fine, and it'll automatically adjust to the speed of the road here in Europe at least, and I actually can't override this. It's because the lane has just 2 lanes. If there are traffic in the other direction on the road, it won't let you go a certain threshold above the speed limit. Here it's 40 kilometers per hour, so it'll only let you go 43 kilometers per hour. So 3 kilometers per hour over the speed limit. So of course you wouldn't use it on roads like this. It's not really meant to be used on city roads like this, but I'll show you where it works very nicely. So now we are in traffic. If I enable cruise control now, start to creep forward once the car in front creeps forward. And I can adjust and also the speed. So you see the car in the front moves and we will move. So it can be enabled at any time. And you can also enable this with Autosteer. I know I'll be changing lanes here, so that's why I didn't activate with Autosteer. But you can do it if you want. So now we are on a road that's very common here in Norway and Europe. So this is a 50-60 zone road. So let's activate Autopilot here. This is a very normal road in Norway. Since there is traffic in other directions, I am limited to 53 kilometers per hour, which is fine. We are doing 45 kilometers per hour due to traffic. And you can see that the car will hold its lane and it'll start nagging that you should hold the steering wheel. You just need to apply a tiny bit of torque on one side of the steering wheel and you are good to go. Here it's a 60 zone coming up, and there it changed, and you'll be able to change to 64 kilometers per hour. The problem with these GPS limited speeds and the camera, of course, which detects the road signs, there is a combination, is that old map data will make Autopilot useless on some roads where it doesn't know the speed limit, because this is a hard limit. So you can see lane markings are sometimes bad, sometimes they disappear, and yeah, it works. It works perfectly on roads like this. This is what it's meant for. So it can't even see the road ahead, and it works. And now we are moving into a roundabout, so I need to actually take over because this is not fully self-driving. And I'll activate Autopilot again. It's really easy to activate. And now it actually allows me to go 67 or more. It'll recognize the road. It's not based on map data, the road type. It's based on actually seeing traffic coming in the other direction and limiting the speed. So I just play here. I'll go 64. I'm not doing anything. You can't actually assist with steering on Autopilot. It'll just cancel. So if it recognizes my steering input at all, these lines will disappear. So you'll know. This is a pretty tight bend. It's fine, perfectly fine. Now it's 70 and we are allowed to go 75. So it's not 3 kilometers, it's a percentage. I don't know the exact percentage of the speed limit that you can go when there's traffic in the other direction. But yeah, we could do some math on that. But now it's 70 and 75. We're moving up on some cars. It'll brake, recognize that there is a bend coming up. It'll adjust its speed. It's actually on BMW iX towing. It's one of the best electric cars for towing, actually, with the weight ratings in Europe. So this is a tight bend. There is a limit, but it's much higher than most systems. It thinks the car in front is a pickup truck, of course. So this is how it works, and you'll just monitor, be ready to take over at any time. This is just an assist system, not fully self-driving or anything, and even that system should be monitored closely. The only thing I need to do is to lightly tap the steering wheel every 15 seconds, something like that. Yeah, some people do it wrong. They'll put the weight on both sides of the steering wheel. This is a torque sensor, so you need to put steering input at the one side of the steering wheel, not both. So just lightly tap one of the sides. In my road trip experience, I've found a comfortable position, and it feels almost as good as being able to have like hands-free. Though hands-free is of course better and more comfortable. I found that just lightly holding the side of the left side for me of the steering wheel in a resting position, it works perfectly fine. So it recognized the 50 speed limit and slow down and makes this turn perfectly fine, and slows down because of the car in front and thinks it's a semi-trailer. You can just, if you want the car to go faster, you can just tap the accelerator at any time. It won't cancel the auto steering system. It'll slow in bends like this. This is a very hefty bend, and it'll make the turn perfectly fine. It's pretty cool, actually, how it works. I have experience with Subarus and Volkswagens and other cars as well, lane holding system, and they are not nearly as good as this, but they are about the same on the motorway, I would say. Maybe even better, because Volkswagen Travel Assist, you can hold to one side of the road. Here you are forced to be in the middle of the lane. Tight bend, it'll brake, and it'll set that we are limited when there are tight bends, because in Europe there is a limit of how much steering input is allowed. So we will return and we will try to go on the motorway. So just activate autopilot. It's very easy to disengage. Just pull up on the lever and engage by pulling twice down. Very simple. And that makes it easy if you are doing lane changes that will cancel. I'll show you later, but that will cancel the auto steering. You can just... It's super easy to engage and disengage, and you can activate it mid-turn. You can activate it anywhere, which is nice. And there is a low latency before it recognizes the lanes and will be able to do those. So tight bend, it'll brake a little bit and let me know that we are on the limit of what's allowed for steering, but it'll still make the turn perfectly fine. Most of these turns here are very extreme. This is the worst that you can experience on a road that you actually want to use Autosteer on. I don't think I would use Autosteer that much on a road like this, but maybe here, when we are in a 70 zone, 80 zone, perfect. And also when we move into highways, you just use it every time. People need to know that most of Norway is actually not highways. Most of Norway is roads like these, where there is traffic in the other direction, there is no separation, and sometimes even not middle lane lines. We have some highways in Norway, and most of them are located to the east of the country, east and south of the country. There are some stretches here and there. Here in the west as well, there are some stretches, but not nearly as much as other countries. So actually having a driver assistance system that will work nicely on roads with traffic in the other direction, roads that are changing all the time, and having a driver assistance system that's not based on map data is the best solution for Norway. Okay, let's move on to the highway. Engage, and you're supposed to be in the right lane, and we have to disengage and move over to the other lane, and then engage again, and you just stay put at the highway. This is actually a new road, so it's not it doesn't have the correct speed limits. Like, it'll say it's a 60 zone, but it's not. It doesn't have the correct map data, but because there is traffic on both sides here, it'll actually let me go faster. It's just for traffic in the other directions. Once it recognizes that, it'll limit to a certain percentage over the speed limit. But here, there is 2 lanes in each direction. It's a 4-lane tunnel. It's actually the longest motorway tunnel in the world. So it'll let me go the speed limit even though it has the wrong map data, which is nice, and it's a correct way to do it. Of course, the best way to do it is to have updated map data, or just have let me turn off GPS recognize. This road has actually been there for almost a year, but I know there are problems with roads like this. in Norway. So we are moving up on slower traffic, so we want to move out. What we can do is just put on our blinker. We get our blind spot camera, sorry, and I'll just take the steering wheel and move it. It's super light and easy to do, and it won't lock in automatically. You actually need to do that yourself. If you have enhanced autopilot, you can have lane changes, but this is a limitation of this system. But when you activate the blinker, the steering wheel will be very easy to just lock out, really. So we want to move back. I'll put on the blinker. It'll disengage Autosteer, keep adaptive cruise, and I'll enable it again. So really you can just, it's a very good system for the highway. So it says move the steering wheel. Many people will hold both hands and it'll even out the torque. It's better with a capacitive steering wheel, but Tesla doesn't do that, so you have to deal with the torque sensor. So this is the easiest test for Tesla Autopilot. So this is actually the system that you get included on your Tesla if you buy it. And you can't option without, it's included in the price, so you get lane holding on the motorway. So it's an impressive system considering that it's included in the price. You don't need to pay any extra. Travel assist on Volkswagen is extra, and I know most automakers will have an extra cost or subscription for their driver assistance features. But this is very good system considering it's free and included. I have confidence in the system. It has flaws, like I mentioned before, with the GPS stuff and some phantom braking, but not here. And I know almost know every place it'll phantom brake. It'll let you know if it disengages, not just turn itself off and drift out of the lane. It'll let you know. I know how it will behave. I know it'll be a little bit unsure when there are no lane markings on the right side, which is usual in Norway, but most places in Europe doesn't have this problem, so that's why it isn't optimized for Norway, really. So there is an 80 zone. Since it'll let me go over, I have to manually adjust the speed. And we are back in Autopilot. So in conclusion, Autopilot works where it's supposed to work in Norway. On highways, which are limited stretches in Norway, they work pretty well. The roads that cover almost all of Norway in 80-90 zones, 70, 80, 90 zones, it's perfect. It works super nicely. It'll just follow the traffic if there is traffic. It'll just be very confident, very, very confident on 80-90 zones. And I don't know how many percent of Norway is 80-90 zones with traffic in the other direction, but most roads are 80-90 zones with traffic in the other direction. On 50-60 zones, it can be a little bit tricky, like I showed you before. It'll beep because it has maximum steering wheel input, but it'll kind of work. I think it's nice for traffic in those conditions, but I wouldn't use it in places where there are a lot of turns, which doesn't exist in 80-90 zones. The turns that actually will tell you that, oh, it's maximum steering, not in normal 80-90 zones. Of course, there are some crazy roads in Norway where it won't work. In lower 40-30 zones, you should drive manually. Those are very, very limited zones, of course. On roads with no center markings, you should use this system with very caution, but it will work. Adaptive cruise will work, and lane holding, or Autosteer, which Tesla calls it, will work on roads where there are no center line. This is super unique, but also kind of frightening, because sometimes it won't be as confident as others. So you need to be ready to take over if you're going to use it on roads that don't have center markings.